right. I like this game for a number of reasons. One, for many years, I had a problem facing the Trompowsky. I played it myself, let's see, it was 2006, 2007. I had a year where it was my main opening with white. And I do feel that it does have some poison and surprise value as black has to face it so rarely. The issue, though, is there are so many different ways for black to play, and I would only recommend it for very creative players with white. So the first time I saw this idea, it was, or almost every Tromp book that I read, when you play G6, they're like, and we just get to mess up the pawn structure, we're going to get our ideal position, and black's going to do things like play bishop G7, and there's some great example games, like Adams Kasparov is a good example. But modern theory tells us that this position is actually pretty easy to play for black if you know what you're doing. So this is another one of those lines that I have in my upcoming Benoni course. So memory markers work like this. My bishop is not going to G7. In fact, he's going to go to D6. And I cannot stress this enough. You cannot allow yourself an isolated d-pawn in this position. So we're going to play d5, and whether they play c4 or otherwise, we get rid of the pawn. My opponent goes h4. No, no, no. None of that. Bishop e2. And already, this can be the problem of creativity with playing an opening like the Trump. This white has already played a subpar move in h4, being creative, and I'm just going for my typical setup. Bishop d6. Well, he really is in the trading business, so let's go ahead and get that done. c6. And now, I had already pre-moved knight d7 here. So, mistakes do happen. Much better would have been just to simply play queen f6. But this game would not be interesting without this error. Because now we get in a position where my king is wide open, I'm down a pawn, and I'm objectively lost. So the question is, how can we provide ourselves the most chances to win when things go wrong like this? Well, the only imbalance that I have is bishop versus knight. My f-pawn is weak, and my king is open. So making it to some sort of endgame to where my king is active and useful, getting the queens off the board, that could be a goal. Opening up the position further, trying to play f4 at some point, get rid of the pawn, and yeah, that's another goal. So first, let's stop checks. Knight f6. Well, my opponent probably should have played a move like queen f3, because now I can get rid of that weakness. Now, I'm not in too much of a hurry to take, because that's going to give white the open file to work with. I want him to take me, which will disconnect the pawns, making them targets for the future. So let's go back to one of those other plans. Endgame. Would you like to trade? No? I believe I insist. So now white has finally finished development on move 19. And I don't feel nearly as terrible about my position because I got just a little bit of something to work with here. I still want him to take on f4, so let's apply more steady pressure. Takes. Now the f-file really doesn't mean anything, and he's already committed the rook to e1 for defense. Well, I don't want that pawn going anywhere. So he tries to fight for key squares. I need the d-pawn there to prevent him from playing e4. So I was hopeful he'd play a move like c5, but he gives me an isolated pawn. Then knight b1, trying to reroute to go after the weakness. What's best for black here? This is why we don't give up, folks. Rook takes e3. Pin it to win it. He's not going anywhere. Takes. And now that knight is defending the d5 pawn as well. Want to free up my knight to move again. Keep him out of key squares. Also, I want to note how the pawns are in full agreement with my bishop. So I just need to organize my knight and bishop again. Okay, you're trying to get to c5. I don't like that. Knight c4. So white has been trying to harass the pawns, but the effectiveness of the position has now run its course. And he makes a radical decision here. I'm going to give a knight in order to get a couple pawns. And hopefully you're starting to see where this game is going. Because yes, it's going to get there. The opponent forces me to go for the knight and bishop checkmate. And I'll be honest, I had not much time here. But this is why some endings are important to get down. And the way I train endings, especially endings that are like this, if you can't do it with seconds on the clock with a delay, you can't do it. And recently, I say recently, it was a few months ago, there was a tournament game at the Palm Beach Chess Club that it was between two players that were between 1600 and 1800, and one of the players got the knight and bishop position with a 5-second delay and could not win. So train your endings properly, and by that, once you have studied the ending and done it on a real board, play it against the computer where you have a limited amount of time. So I have no delay here in a 3-minute game, and by this point, I have like roughly 30 seconds. So let's see how we do it. Well, I want to coordinate the pieces first, and it's lovely when your opponent rushes to the corner, and now this is where it actually begins, because you have to checkmate in the corner color square of the bishop. So here or here? Well, this one's clearly going to be easy. So let's see how we do it. First, I want to prevent you from coming back. And now, children, the letter of the day is W, because that is the path the knight will follow in order for you to win. Get it? So let's see the W at work. Well, there's the V so far. And he's trying to run. Notice. If only we had a specialized piece that worked in dark squares. We do. To your hole you go. Continue our letter. There's our W. He's trying to get out. We say no. Very important. We didn't want to put the knight here because it's going to get in the way of the bishop trying to checkmate. Don't place the knight here. That would be stalemate. Waste of tempo. Check. And mate. So a very satisfying game because you don't often get to play these types of positions out. And you got to love it sometimes that knight bishop checkmates actually occur, and it happened in a game. I think this is probably like my 5th one in all of my chess games. I don't know. I've played a lot of chess games over the years. I probably average, if I had to guess, counting 1 minute, 30,000 games a year. I play a lot. I don't know. That's probably too much. But if I've only had it 5 times, you can do the stats on how important this is to study. But it sure was satisfying. So hopefully you enjoyed the game. A little bit of touch for what do you do against a Trompowsky? What do you do when you blunder? Try to make the most of the situation, and how to do knight and bishop checkmate. It's a little bit of a combo for you. Thanks for tuning in. Like and subscribe if you're still with me.